The child came out of the snow an hour before dawn. I found her when I opened the east door to check the wind gauge, a small shape curled against the foundation stones, half buried in drift. Lavender skin, silver hair matted with ice. She couldn't have been out there long or she'd have been dead, but long enough that her lips had gone the color of old slate. I carried her inside. She weighed nothing. I set her on the cot by the stove, wrapped her in the wool blanket I keep for the worst nights, and fed the firebox until the cabin walls ticked with heat. She didn't speak, didn't cry, just watched me with those wide, pale gold eyes, the kind that belonged to the Theshi, all pupil, no white, and pressed herself against the blanket as if she could disappear into it. Her wrists had marks on them, thin, dark bands where something had been fastened and then cut away. The skin underneath was raw, and the pattern was too even to be accidental. I didn't ask, not yet. I made broth from the dried ration stock in the pantry, salt and warmth and something to hold. I set the cup in front of her and sat down on the stool across the cot, and I waited while she decided whether I was safe. It took her a long time. Then she picked up the cup with both hands, and drank, and looked at me over the rim with an expression I recognized. I'd seen it 20 years ago, on a different world, in a forward hospital I'd rather not think about. It's the look a child gives you when they've spent all their fear, and there's nothing left but a thin, cautious hope that this one will be different. My name is Maren Voss. I am 67 years old. I have a bad left knee, arthritis in both hands, and I haven't held a weapon since I mustered out of the Terran Engineering Corps at 43. I came to Cathara Ridge because it was quiet, and I was done, and in 20 years, I have learned every rock, every ice sheet, every wind shear pocket, every chute and overhang on this mountain. I know where the snow is stable, and where it isn't. I know where a footstep will hold, and where a footstep will kill you. I didn't expect the knowledge to matter again. They came at midday. 7 of them. I saw them on the east ridge first, dark shapes moving in a line along the snowfield, spaced the way men space themselves when they know the ground might go. They carried longbore rifles, the kind the Korath Syndicate issues to its sweep teams. I'd seen the configuration in briefing files a lifetime ago. They were tracking the child. Biosignature, most likely. Theshi blood runs 2 degrees warmer than any native life on this planet, and in fresh snow, that trace would light up on a scanner like a lit road. I went inside and crouched by the cot. The girl looked at me. I held up one finger. Wait. And she nodded once, small and precise, as if she'd been told to wait before and understood what it cost to disobey. I had no weapons. The relay tower was down. The storm 2 nights ago had cracked the uplink housing, and I hadn't climbed up to repair it yet. No communications. No one coming. I had the mountain. I put on my heaviest parka and strapped on my crampons and walked out to the saddle, the narrow shelf where the East Ridge path funnels between the granite shoulder and the ice face. There is one way up from the valley to my homestead, and it runs through that saddle. I have walked it in every season for 20 years. I know exactly what it can carry and what it cannot. The leader stopped 15 meters out. Korath, tall, gray-scaled, frost collecting on the bony ridge of his jaw. He looked at me the way people look at a problem they hadn't budgeted time for. Not alarm, inconvenience. Old woman, he said. There is a child on this mountain. She belongs to a transit allocation. We are here to collect her. No, I said. He tilted his head. The wind tore between us. -30, gusting hard. The kind of cold that makes patience expensive. This is not a request, he said. We carry authorization from the Korath Intake Bureau. I don't care what you carry, I said. She's not going with you. There is a moment, when you say something like that to an armed man in deep cold, where the world gets very thin. He looks at you, and sees an old woman with a swollen knee and shaking hands. He sees no weapon, no rank, no reinforcement, no reason to slow down. He runs the arithmetic on what it would take to walk through you, and he finds the number very small. What he does not calculate is the mountain. I stepped back, not retreating. Back, along the path I've walked 10,000 times, toward the choke point where the shelf narrows to 1.5 meters, and the ice wall on the left carries a fracture I found 9 years ago, a stress seam running 40 meters up the face. Stable in summer. In winter, after 3 days of freeze and thaw, it holds together only because nothing has touched it. They followed. Of course they followed. 7 armed men following one old woman across a snow shelf. There was nothing in that arithmetic to slow them down. I counted steps. 14 from the saddle to the choke. I took them slowly, my knee grinding, my breath short, and when I reached the cairn I'd set 11 winters back. 3 stacked stones half buried under crust. I stopped. "Last chance," I said. "Go back down the way you came." The leader made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. It wasn't cruel. It was the sound of a man who genuinely could not find a reason to be concerned. I drove my crampon heel into the ice at the base of the seam, twice. 3 times. Hard, precise, the way I was trained in the engineering corps. Not with strength but with resonance. You don't break stressed ice. You give it permission to break itself. The sound came first, a crack that ran up the wall faster than a man can turn his head. Then the shelf above the choke shifted, not a roaring avalanche, nothing dramatic, just a thick, decisive plate of compacted snow and ice, sliding off the face, and filling the narrow passage in 4 seconds. Clean, heavy, final. 7 men on one side, me on the other. The leader stared at the wall of packed ice blocking the only path to my homestead. His men stared at him. I watched from 6 meters away, on the home side of the collapse, my knee singing, and my hands shaking inside my gloves. "That will hold for 3 days," I said. "By then, the relay will be up, and I'll have filed a report with the Colonial Authority. You have the long trail down the west face. Use it. Don't come back." He looked at me for a long time. Then he turned and said something to his men in a dialect I didn't catch, and they moved back along the ridge, single file, the way they'd come. I stood there until I couldn't see them anymore. Then I went inside. The child was where I'd left her, blanket to her chin, hands around the empty cup. She watched me come through the door with snow on my shoulders and ice in my hair, and she didn't move until I lowered myself onto the stool beside the cot. Then she reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were small and warm, theshy warm, that low, steady heat that hums under their skin like a second pulse. My arthritic knuckles ached under her grip, and I did not pull away. "You're safe," I said. I don't know whether she understood the word, but she understood the hand, and she understood the stove, and she understood that the woman on this mountain had not let them take her. I fixed the relay the next morning, filed the report, gave my coordinates, her description, and told them to send someone equipped for a child. Someone with a medical kit and a warm ship and a proper placement, not a one-room cabin on a frozen ridge. They came 4 days later, a social placement team from the Colonial Authority, quiet and competent, with blankets better than mine and rations that weren't broth. She didn't want to go. She stood in the doorway and looked back at me, and I saw it in those gold eyes, the question children ask when they don't have the language for it. I walked to the door, got down on my bad knee, slow and deliberate, because she was small, and I am not, and she deserved to be spoken to at her own height. "You're going to be all right," I said. She put her hand on my cheek. One small lavender palm, cool fingertips against weathered skin. Then she turned and walked to the transport, and I watched it lift off the ridge and bank south toward the valley, and I stayed in the doorway until I couldn't see it anymore. I went back inside. The blanket on the cot was still warm. I sat down in the quiet and let my knees stop hurting, and I thought about what 20 years on a mountain are good for, and I decided they were good for exactly this.